Now, the next question then becomes, okay, so let's say you were convicted of a felony. What can you do to sort of fix the felony in such a way that will no longer prohibit you from owning or possessing firearms? Well, generally speaking, at least in California, the best way to do that for a prior felony conviction is to get what's called a 17B, Penal Code 17, Subdivision B, and have your felony conviction reduced to a misdemeanor for all purposes, which would include purposes such as obtaining a firearm. Now, what you need to understand about this is that this process is generally only available to convictions that at the time you were convicted, the charge, whatever it is of the type that could have been charged as either a misdemeanor or a felony, which is what's called a wobbler, meaning at the time you were convicted, the prosecutor generally had discretion to say, we're charging this as a felony or a misdemeanor, depending on the circumstances. And so what that means is that you actually have to go look at your rap sheet, see what you were convicted of, and look at the penal code of the conviction at the time it was in effect during your conviction. A good example are drug convictions, particularly marijuana convictions, which, at least in California, now for the most part, can be charged as misdemeanors. Wasn't until very recently, however, because prior to that, a lot of those charges were actually straight felonies, meaning that if you were convicted of a marijuana-related offense, let's say from like the 1970s, 1980s, 1990s, that kind of thing, it very well could have been a felony offense, and being a felony offense was not of the type that you could have had reduced to a misdemeanor. Because gotta watch out that car here. Because there was no discretion at the prosecutor's part in bringing that charge to bring it as a misdemeanor or a felony. So this does require a little bit of research to determine whether or not your specific conviction is of the type that can actually be reduced to a misdemeanor. Now, there are special circumstances, and we're talking about marijuana, so let's talk about that for a second. Prop 64. Prop 64 was a voter initiative here in California that changed numerous aspects regarding California laws as applied to marijuana. And if you were convicted of certain felony offenses involving marijuana, like Health and Safety Code 11359 as an example, that at the time was a straight felony, Prop 64 has created a special petition process, which for the most part is very much like a 17B reduction. And a Prop 64 reduction, if you were to obtain one, will treat the the felony conviction as a misdemeanor for all purposes, which again includes purchasing a firearm. So, what this means is that if you were convicted of a Health and Safety Code that is of the type that Prop 64 applies to, you could potentially have your firearm rights restored, even though it was a straight felony, and there's no 17B option available for you.